Hey there everyone, this is Cloud Chief, and in today's video I wanted to talk about ZNMs. To start, you need to go ahead and take pictures of monsters so that way you can actually start accumulating Zeni. To do this, you need to go to the Coliseum in Whitegate, and then you need to trade Imperial coins to this NPC to get a different type of currency so you can actually buy the cameras and film. Now there are two cameras and two types of film. You want to get a Soul Trapper 2000, and you can also get a Soul Trapper if you want, but you want to prioritize the 2000 as the time for taking pictures is much faster. You can get the other Soul Trapper just so you can also take pictures. Then you just want to get normal soul plates. Do not bother getting the high speed ones, as that is just a waste of currency. After that, at this point in the game, I recommend you come out to Bissia Tarongi, and then you'll want to go ahead and go to the third conflux. From there, you're going to just run to the west, and you're going to find little mini Fafners, or wyverns. And what your goal is here is going to get them to low HP, and then start taking pictures. To take pictures, you go ahead and equip them in your range and ammo slot. And you ideally want to get them as low as you possibly can, because the lower their HP is when you take pictures, the more points you're going to get. When you're taking pictures, you do want to make sure that you are directly in front of the monster with it having low HP. By standing really close to it and directly in front of it, that is going to give you the maximum amount of points per Zeni. If you picked up the Soul Trapper 2000 and the Soul Trapper, you're going to want to take pictures with the Soul Trapper 2000. Then as soon as you take the picture, switch to your regular Soul Trapper, take a picture of that, then switch back to the 2000 again, take another picture, and then you'll end up repeating that process. So then you'll end up taking two pictures with the 2000 in a row, then you'll go back to the normal one. If you didn't and only picked up the 2000 one, you can actually make a macro so that way you are taking a picture every 35 seconds or so, and you can use this macro here. There's two different ways you could set it up. You could have it so it takes 6 pictures, and that way you can just hit the macro and go do something for a few minutes until it's done taking all the pictures. Or you could set it up so the last line of your macro gives you some indication in your chat log that you are finished taking pictures and you need to hit the macro again. Once you're done taking all your pictures, you can come back to the NPCs in Whitegate at E8. You come over here and just trade him all of these soul plates that you took pictures for, and he will give you Zeni accordingly. Just to note, you can only turn in 10 soul plates per day unless you've actually beaten mission 116 and Rhapsody missions, which will give you an Azure key item, which will then allow you to turn in unlimited soul plates. So it is highly recommended that you have gotten past this mission before you try and go through Zeni NMs. Now that you have the Zeni currency, you can start going through the actual NM process. There are 3 separate branches that you need to go through if you're trying to get to the final bosses or even Pandemonium Warden in the sets. For each branch, there is 3 tier 1s, 3 tier 2s, 3 tier 3s, then there is the main boss, which is either Hydra, Cerberus, or Chimera. And then after you beat all 3 of them, you can go and do Pandemonium Warden if you so choose. Which tier 1 and tier 2s you do for each branch does not matter. You could in theory spam out the same one per branch for the tier 1 and tier 2s until you have the ability to get a tier 3 NM. For the tier 3s, you do need to do all 3 of the tier 3s to be able to do the boss of that branch. Here I have the charts for each NM and essentially whether the NM is easy or not. At the top you'll see whether it's either green, yellow, or red. Green means that is the recommended NM to do, as it's very easy to access. Yellow means it's not as easy to access, but it is a decent option. Red means that they are difficult to get to by some means, and it's not really recommended. First, I'm going to start off talking about the Cerberus path. I highly recommend that you do Brass Boar and Claret, as they are pretty much right next to each other, and you can get from one pop to the other in under a minute. Obe, as he is not hard to get to, but it's only one, and then he is a little bit more of a trek than it is for some of the other NMs that are in the undersea ruins, so I don't really recommend him. As for the Tier 2, Anatabaga is by far the easiest to get to, and is definitely recommended. Reactin and Dextros honestly aren't that bad, even though I have them marked red, if you're going to go for both of them. However, to get to Renekton, you do need the KI that will open the doors in Halvung. And if you don't have that, then it's not really recommended. And it is a little bit of a trek to get to them. And if you're not going to do both of them, it's not really worth the trek, and you're better off doing the other NM. As for the Hydra path, Cheese Hoarder for the Tier 1 is highly recommended, as he is very easy to get to. Voltang is not hard to get to, but it is a little bit of a trek out in the woodlands. And as for the Calibre, he's not really recommended, as he's pretty far into Mamuk. As for the Tier 2s, Iris Ima is very easy to get to, and so is Livet Root Amouche. I do not recommend going for Iriri Samurai. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong, as he's very deep in Mamuk and not easy to access. And as for the Tier 1 and Tier 2 for the Kim path, Chigure is by far the easiest to get to, and you should use the book to the subterranean to go get to him. The other two, while they're not terribly hard to get to, as they're on the first map in Apargo Reef, the problem is you need a Lamia Fang key to access them. So unless you're going to pick the lock or farm a key, they're not really easy to get to, so it's much more recommended to just go for Chigure. Vertilet is probably by far the easiest to get to. You just go out to Katev Meyer and you can take him out pretty easily. Well, Goru is not that hard to get to in the ruins, but I do think Vertilet is by far easier. Zerikal the Jubilant is not easy to get to and is pretty far in Apaga Reef, therefore it is not recommended to go after this NM. As for the Tier 3s, you need to do all of the Tier 3s if you want to advance to the Tier 4 in that one particular branch. So you need to go through and take all of these out, and here are the pop locations and the item for all the Tier 3s. Because of the location of some of these, you might want to mix and match some of them. Like, you might want to get to the point where you're at Tier 3s on one branch, and then while you're doing a Tier 3 in one branch, you're doing a Tier 1 in a completely different branch, because it's not that far away from the other one, therefore you're saving running around time. The NPC you traded the plates for Zeni will give you the pops for the Notorious Monsters. You talk to him, and then you will turn in Zeni to get a physical item to pop the Notorious Monster. After you go kill that Notorious Monster, it will drop a trophy, which is another physical item that will take up inventory space. You go back to this NPC and trade it in, and he will give you a key item, which is a seal. Having a seal will allow you to get the next tier Notorious Monster. After you get the next tier, you will then lose the seal, so you will have to go back and do the Tier 1 again to get the seal again to do another Tier 2. After you've cleared a Tier 2, you'll get a Tier 3, but all the Tier 3s have specific different key items for that Notorious Monster on the Tier 3 level. Once you have all three on the Tier 3 level, you can then get the Tier 4. Once you have all four Tier 4s, you can trade them in and get a Pandemonium Warden pop. However, considering you need the 3 trophies from the Tier 4s for Mythic, if you're going for a Mythic, you would then want to hold on to the trophies and then trade them in for your Mythic. For the Hydra path, I recommend that you do Cheese Hoarder 3 times. However, you can go ahead and do Cheese Hoarder once, then you could go pop either Ears Ema or Livet Amusha, and then you would be on a tier 3. You could then go back and then do Cheese Hoarder, and then also do an Armed Gear, which is the tier 3 on that path at the same time you're on the runes, and then go ahead and then do another tier 2. You could also, while you're in the same zone, for Livet Root Amush to go ahead and then do Dia, or if you're in Iris Ema's zone, you could go ahead and do Goten's the Redolent. For the Cerberus path, you would want to go ahead and do Brass Borer and then do Claret, and I would recommend doing them at the same time. You could then turn around and go do Anataboga twice, although you would have to go back to the NPC in between each time. Or if you have the key item and you're up for it, you could do Reactin and Dextros, although that is a lot more running around. Breastbore and Claret are easily accessible through the Halvong staging point. Anatabonga is easily accessible through the home point crystal for the Halvong area. If you were to do Reactin and Dextros, you would want to use the home point crystal in Halvong also, but you're going to want to head south as you would otherwise be heading north to go to Anaboga. Nosferatu, which is one of the tier 3s in Ottawa Subterrane, is actually easily accessible through the book, and it's also near Chigure, which is the Kim tier 1, so it's good to try and knock them out at the same time. Chromasol Bur Borlor is accessible through the Halvong staging point, but you want to go east and wrap your way all the way around so that you would go south, then back west, and then north to get to him. Akamoth is easily accessible through the survival guide in Halvong. For the Kim path, you're going to want to stick to Chigure for the tier 1s, as the other 2 are not easily accessible. As for the tier 2s, Vertilet is probably the easiest, followed by Walgoru, and you could hit either of these up for your tier 2. The Kim path tier 3 Soul Flare is easily accessible through either the Undersea Ruins or using the Voidwatch Warp. As for the Experimental Lamia and Noon, they are both easily accessible through the Survival Guide in Kadev Mire. Just to note, to access the tier 4s, you do need not only the pop item, but you also need a key item that you get for 500 Zeni, and you get this from the same NPC that you turn in the trophies and get the pop items for. So before you go into the tier 4s, make sure that you actually have the key item so that way you can get to the island to pop the NMs. And that pretty much wraps up my explanation for Zeni NMs. Considering they're all over the place, it might take a little bit of time for you to get used to and figure out your path. I think you should sit down and try and figure out what path you think would work best for you. The other thing to note is that the cost for Zeni NMs is 1,000 per tier. So a tier 1 is 1,000 Zeni, a tier 2 is 2,000 Zeni, and so on up. However, if a lot of pops are being purchased, the price will go up. So sometimes it's better to choose a different NM if you're low on Zeni and don't feel like farming. And that about wraps up my guide for doing Zeni NMs. If you have any questions, feel free to leave any comments below and I will answer them the best I can. I hope you enjoyed this video, hope you got some value out of it, and may you have success in all you do.